When most people hear the words human trafficking, they think of distant places, third world countries, shadowy rings overseas. But according to anti-trafficking activist Jacko Booyens, that's Jacobooyens, just so you have a picture of what I'm saying. According to anti-trafficking activist Jacko Booyens, that's not reality. There's not a single county or zip code in the United States where human trafficking cases have not been reported. And when you follow the money, you discover that some of America's most prestigious financial institutions helped build the system that allows trafficking to flourish. So today we connect the dots from child victims to Jeffrey Epstein's banking empire to the terrifying realization that trafficking isn't a fringe crime, it's a business model, it's an industry, it's an economy. How big is the problem? Booyan's credibility is hard-earned. His sister was trafficked through the music industry at age 12. He's spent 31 years in this fight. Here's what he told Kim Iverson. Check out the Kim Iverson podcast. Human trafficking is a $152 billion annual global economy, with the U.S. responsible for 1/3 of the demand. $52 billion. Again, there's not a single county or zip code in America untouched by trafficking. Let's look at Texas. Texas actually has tough laws. In Texas alone, 76,000 children are actively trafficked, with 300 children sold on the streets of Dallas every single night. Only 1.7% of cases today involve kidnapping. Nearly half involve family members or caregivers. The terminology for that is familial trafficking. We might learn a number of terms today about which power dynamics are applied. Is it money? Is it a family connection? You might be surprised at what the most powerful leverage is. Why the courts are failing. In 2015, Congress finally codified federal laws specifically differentiating minor trafficking from adult prostitution. Before then, minors were sometimes charged as prostitutes. But laws on paper aren't enough. In the past 2 years, there have been just 148 federal prosecutions for sex trafficking, while, if you're lucky, it's only tens of thousands of victims trafficked. And I have my doubts. At the state level, convictions on trafficking charges have dropped from 47% to 16%. Judges are untrained. Prosecutors plead cases down to kidnapping or drug charges instead of trafficking. Booyan's solution? Specialized trafficking courts, just as the U.S. created specialty bankruptcy courts in 1978. And some states have created drug courts. Judges and prosecutors need training, survivor-informed protocols, and NGO partnerships to handle these complex cases. How predators operate in 2025. So gone are the days of pimps in fur coats, at least to my knowledge, at least in my neighborhood. Trafficking now thrives in plain sight, hidden in technology. The number one grooming tactic today is emotional support. Predators gain trust by exploiting a child's vulnerabilities. The platforms, this blew me away. I found out I'm a regular user of the number one platform for trafficking on Discord. I use Discord with a bot called Midjourney that I use for some of my image creation. But Discord, I guess it's gaming chats. So all these gaming boards or chats, I guess, for different games, which makes sense. But I swear I'm just using it for this Midjourney bot, which is just graphic design. And man, that's disturbing. I had no idea. Instagram's number 2, followed by Snapchat, and then YouTube. And on average, a predator invests 9 months grooming a child online before exploitation. This is all from Jack O'Bullion's interview on the Kim Iverson show, by the way, this info. From the streets to the banks, the Epstein model. Now, if you think trafficking is just a street-level crime, think again. Picture this. November 2009. J.P. Morgan executive Jess Staley sits in Epstein's hot tub, writing to him an email. And I quote, "So when all hell breaks loose and the world is crumbling, I will come here and be at peace. I owe you much, and I deeply appreciate our friendship." That's Jess Staley, a J.P. Morgan executive, in the hot tub on the island that we've all heard about. That's while Epstein's sitting in jail as a convicted offender with an underage girl. That's when our boy at J.P. Morgan's texting him from his hot tub on his pedophile island. Epstein wasn't just trafficking women or children, both. He was also operating a financial sexual blackmail empire enabled by the world's biggest banks. And remember, this is all in tandem with the biggest part of his operation, which isn't this creepy stuff. It's different creepy stuff. It's his money laundering, his offshore, it's hiding money for rich people. 80% of that black book is his financial crimes, and 20% of his black book is people he's blackmailing for God knows what. Whatever's running through your imagination. Epstein held 55 accounts at J.P. Morgan. He moved hundreds of millions through that bank. He generated $4 billion with a B in clientele for the bank by referring clients like Sergey Brin and Larry Page. Oh my goodness, they're the 2 founders of Google, aren't they? Leon Black. Leon Black was a Wall Street wizard, founder of Apollo Global Management. Ehud Barak was an Israeli prime minister, and Prince Andrew, well, Prince Andrew is a himbo drooling buffoon. He brought those people to J.P. Morgan. Court documents show millions in suspicious transfers to women and girls, including identified confirmed trafficking victims. Staley also emailed Epstein about how much he liked Snow White. Epstein replied, "Who do you want to meet next?" To which Jess Staley from J.P. Morgan replied, "Beauty and the Beast." thinly veiled references to underage girls, dare I say, and Beauty and the Beast? He wants to meet Beauty and the Beast? Hey, Jess Staley, quit stealing my move. Sorry, I'll probably have to cut that out. I think you want to meet Beauty, you frickin' idiot. Why are there so many idiots in this story? Prince Andrew's got some competition from Jess Staley at JP Morgan, but I'll move on. You can find any of this info in JP Morgan Epstein lawsuit docs, by the way. You want to hear something batshit crazy? While Epstein's put away, JP Morgan was paying off some of his accusers for him. Now listen close. Not at his request. JP Morgan was getting ahead of the problem. JP Morgan took it upon JP Morgan to make sure accusers got paid off. Nobody even knows whose money they used. Nobody knows if they used Epstein's money or their own money, or why, outside of their fiduciary or business relationship with Jeff Epstein, they were paying victims of trafficking or pedophilia, fill in the blank. That's a weird responsibility to take on unless you've got a reason to take on that responsibility. The banking system is the trafficking system. After Epstein's death, JP Morgan suddenly reported $1 billion in suspicious transactions after 16 years of silence. The bank paid a $200 million settlement. That's less than 2 days' profit. No executives went to prison. As one Virgin Islands investigator put it, this wasn't banking. This was a partnership in a criminal conspiracy. You want a source on that? Go to U.S. Virgin Islands v. J.P. Morgan Chase filings. Connecting the dots. Here's the through line. At the street level, children are being trafficked in every freaking neighborhood in America. At the systemic level, major banks and elites shield and fund trafficking operations. And in the courts, cases are pled down, prosecutions collapse, and victims rarely see justice. I mean, you can watch cases like these Epstein cases play out, which on one hand, you know for a fact he has an extraordinary level of protection. But then weigh that against the fact that it's so open in public, which would ordinarily, you think, outweigh any sort of backroom deals like just the microscope and the spotlight. But my God, that side of the coin plays out all in broad daylight, and everybody's just a little bit too busy to pay enough attention to see it go down at the end of their nose. So it's not just a crime, it's a system. Systemic, if you will. Until we confront both ends, the predators in our neighborhoods and the bankers in our skyscrapers, the cycle will continue. The victims deserve better than our silence. Some new information from the Ghislaine Maxwell interviews of just a few weeks ago, where Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche questioned Epstein's former associate for 2 days. Full transcripts were released a week or so ago. Catch and release, lose and forget, the vanishing of America's children. Not in the gilded halls of power, but in the shadows where America has systematically disappeared nearly 500,000 children. Talking about the vanishing of unaccompanied minors in America. We open this segment not in the gilded halls of power, but in the shadows where America has systematically disappeared nearly 500,000 children. According to testimony before the Federal Law Enforcement Subcommittee, this crisis, which again they're calling catch and release, lose and forget, but calling it a crisis relatively sanitizes what can only be described as the largest state-sponsored human trafficking operation in American history. Let me give you a number. 448,000 children. Let that number burn into your conscience for a minute. 448,000 children. In July 2025, Department of Homeland Security Inspector General Joseph Kafari delivered congressional testimony describing the Biden border crisis, which created a humanitarian disaster that left over 233 unaccompanied alien children without proper legal oversight and vulnerable to exploitation. When Rep. Andy Biggs pressed for the true scope of the nightmare, that 233 number became staggering. To quote, "This government under Joe Biden received hundreds of thousands of unaccompanied children. Is that fair to say, Mr. Kafari?" Unquote. And the Inspector General's response is a leap to, and I quote again, "The number is around 448,000 children." 448,000 children, dear listeners. That's more than the population of Miami. That's more than the population of Oakland. That's more than the population of Minneapolis. An entire major city of children vanished into the American system like smoke. And when Congressman Biggs asked the obvious question, of those, do we know where any are? Kafari's response was just as disturbing. They do not. No idea. But he goes on to say this is simply not an administrative problem. It's a systemic breakdown that poses grave risks to unaccompanied children and fully to the integrity of our legal immigration system. Inspector General Kafari's words carry the gravity of a war crimes tribunal about how significant gaps in how immigration and customs enforcement monitors and manages unaccompanied children cases following release from federal custody are not bureaucratic failures. They're the infrastructure of a trafficking network that would make Jeffrey Epstein weep with envy. Oh, let's lube this machine of horror with some children, shall we? We've got 31,000 children released to, quote, sponsor addresses that were blank, undeliverable, or incomplete. As in, nobody put a freaking address on the form. More than 43,000 just failed to appear for court hearings and are just, poof, ninja dust. When Representative Nancy Mace asked how frequently investigators find numerous children registered to the same address in a bullshit manner, his one-word response, Kafari's, was frequently, quote, unquote. So the perversion of the system becomes clear when we examine what Representative Biggs talks about recently in Florida. There's a case in Orlando where 22 children at one time or another were placed with a freaking strip club. I'm sure somebody had the best of intentions over there. Those kids are probably doing okay. Placed with a strip club. 22 kids. Even the Inspector General, who's up to his eyeballs in this stuff and has heard all kinds of godforsaken stories, had to admit, quote, "That's a new one," unquote. But Biggs hammered it home. Biggs followed through yelling and screaming. It happened. It's not the only time it happened. Multiple kids go to the same address where it's a vacant address. There's not a building there. Strip clubs. Vacant lots. Full-blown addresses that don't even exist. This isn't incompetence. That's deliberate infrastructure designed to disappear children into a commercial sex trade. And the perpetrators weren't shadowy criminals operating in darkness. They were government officials operating in broad daylight with taxpayer funding and some semblance of applause from a portion of our population for the last 5 years. Yay, yay. Sanctuary, yay. You think so? You think that's what you were offering them, you dingbat? Tell it to our homeless vets. 65,000 calls to protect these children went unanswered. More testimony from the House Homeland Security Committee hearing. 65,000 desperate calls from children placed with sponsor families. Calls that, some span from complaints about, the food's not good, all the way to being abused, to one case where a child's call was reporting that grown men were coming into his room at night and they were touching him. So I throw a giant, disgusting, horrifying number at you, 448,000. Or I can tell you a story about one kid who called Biden's hotline to say, hey, men are coming into my room and touching me. I'll tell you the story about that kid. You want to know what happened to that kid's call? Not a damn thing. It was unanswered. Only when the new administration reviewed these abandoned pleas was action taken, leading to an arrest that should have happened immediately. Oh, well, things slip through the cracks, government bureaucracy, red tape, blah, blah, blah. You know how many people were assigned to handle those calls? Same phenomenon as your sanctuary cities and your open borders, kids. La-di-da. Hey, I solved racism. Open borders, la-di-da. How many staff members were assigned to handle 65,000 calls for help? One staffer. The system's deliberate perversion becomes clear. It was easier to get a child, yes, than to adopt a dog. Because you have to provide more paperwork to adopt a pet from a pet shelter than you did to sponsor a child for the last 4 years. And Representative Mace exposes specific policy changes that made that possible. In 2021, the Biden administration removed a requirement that HHS provide ICE with biographic and biometric information to vet the sponsors and adult members of the household of unaccompanied minors. Oh, okay, well, that seems pretty freaking elementary. Seems to me you'd want a tool to vet the sponsors and adult members of the household of unaccompanied minors. The ones who aren't going to a strip club or a parking lot. So they literally made it easier to hand unaccompanied children to criminals. And Mace asked whether ICE was able to properly vet sponsors without this information. Kafari's response was the most horrifying of the day. He said, no, they were prohibited from doing so. Hear me. Not unable. They were prohibited by policy and design from vetting any of the sponsors and adult members of the household of unaccompanied minors. Prohibited. The results of this systematic dismantling of child protection were predictable and horrifying. Just recently, one story, unaccompanied minors as young as 14 were rescued by DHS from exploitation at a California marijuana farm doing hard labor. Why do I mention that? Because frankly, that's the most sunshiny, cheery thing that's going to happen to any of these kids is hard labor on a farm. Those 14 kids should all send a thank you card to the coyote who trafficked them up through Mexico. They should thank whoever at the border wasn't doing their job and sent them to a farm to do hard labor, because guess what they're not doing? They're not getting, what's the word I'm allowed to use on YouTube? They're not being forced right now. They're not taking it from a stranger who's 10 times their age for their first time. No, they're just doing hard labor on a farm. So I say, cheers to that. Trump administration has the Trump administration has begun forming response teams. ICE has a new setup of investigators, agents, HSI types designated to go out, identify, locate, and provide health and welfare checks. They've got a group of 200,000 children that they're going to try and follow up on. So what I'd love to see the stats when that shakes out. What are they going to find in those homes? Listeners, what do you think they're going to find in those quote unquote homes? They're going to find, I don't know, some vacant lots, I'm guessing. They're going to find some blank lines on the paper. Maybe there's no even address filled out, or it's an address that's fictitious, or maybe it's a freaking strip club. I guess we'll see. Now, Ghislaine's great deception. The DOJ interrogation. Before I get into royal corruption and more Trump allegations, we have to talk about Ghislaine. The boss lady. I think she's the boss lady. I think Epstein was her lackey. She's still alive, for one thing. So the madam sits down for 2 days of interviews with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche in July 2025, a few weeks ago. The transcripts were just released last week. And so what they reveal is both shocking and predictable, really. Maxwell's performance. Nobody did anything wrong, and I'd like my pardon now. So Breaking Point's podcast, which I love, you should check them out. They get, I don't know, easily 100 times the traffic of CNN or, those idiots on TV news who think their vaccine doesn't work unless I get one. They took a look at Maxwell testimony, and it's just damage control from their perspective. Sagar Anjetti, who I like, it's a conservative Sagar Anjetti and a liberal Crystal Ball. She used to be on MSNBC, and he used to be a White House press corps reporter. And they're a good match. They do great work on the news, and they're one of the few actual news channels I even will listen to. According to them, Ghislaine Maxwell doesn't implicate Donald Trump. Shocker. Doesn't implicate anybody powerful at all. Prince Andrew did nothing wrong. Bill Gates did nothing wrong. Jeffrey Epstein was a simple money manager. And of course, to the extent that anyone did anything wrong, it was Jeffrey Epstein. And that was after Ghislaine Maxwell was ever in the picture. So that's the thumbnail sketch of what we take away. But her carefully constructed narrative is maybe provably full of lies. When asked about surveillance cameras in Epstein's properties, Maxwell told Attorney General Blanche with absolute certainty, quote, "I do not believe a camera exists, or a video camera, or a camera that takes pictures inside of any of his residences. I never wired nor saw a single house that had any type of inappropriate video surveillance." Now, I'll probably throw it on the screen, although anybody who's following this has already seen, but there's literally pictures from his house, and his own bedroom has a freaking camera up in the corner. Visible. Not particularly well hidden. So, methinks the lady doth be full of shit. And this is where Todd Blanche's questioning becomes a study in deliberate, blind, obtuse, willful ignorance. There's literally no way Todd Blanche hasn't seen that camera in Epstein's bedroom that everyone has seen. She put the ball on a tee. So all I'm saying is maybe he's not there in good faith, because he's right now, with what she said, with evidence the whole world has in its hand, the ball's in Todd Blanche's court, or teed up, whichever sport analogy you prefer. And he's not sitting there saying, what about this photo? What about the cameras everybody's seen? He's letting it go. That's not memory failure or confusion. This is Maxwell lying directly to federal prosecutors about physical evidence that's been documented and photographed. Yet Blanche, formerly Trump's personal attorney, allows her to continue unchallenged, as if the FBI raids and photographic evidence simply don't exist. Ghislaine Maxwell's explanation for how Epstein made his billions is equally preposterous. When asked about his services for clients like Les Wexner and Leon Black, she stated, let's say you had $1 billion to invest. So you would, in people's normal investment portfolios, you would have, some T-bonds and this and that. But Epstein's strategies would be much more sophisticated. That woman should run for office, because there's like 50 words in that paragraph and she didn't say a damn thing. FYI, his clients are billionaires. He's a college dropout. Leon Black ran Apollo Global Management. An investment bank. You're telling me an ego that runs an investment bank is going to Jeff Epstein? That's where the real brilliance is? Hell, Lex Wexner signed over power of attorney for his entire corporate empire, Victoria's Secret, Abercrombie and Fitch, The Limited, and his personal bank accounts, so that Epstein could literally do anything with that money or those resources, and Wexner would be insulated. Technically, well, geez, Jeff Epstein can do whatever he wants with my money. It's not under my control. And that's one of the sources of Epstein's funding, legitimacy, and infrastructure. But Leon Black's a freaking investing genius. Don't give me this nonsense, Ghislaine. Leon Black's one of the most legendary investment advisors of all time. And meantime, Leon Black paid him either $170 or $190 million, but it wasn't to invest. It was just for advice. I don't know, man. That stinks of Leon Black allegedly sleeping with a 14-year-old. That's what that stinks of. Maxwell's Trump defense and the murder allegation. So perhaps the most fun part of Maxwell's performance regarding Donald Trump with the DOJ, her defense of the former president was obvious and calculated, Funny how that works when he holds your pardon in his hands. But she says, I never saw the president in any type of massage setting. I never witnessed the president in any appropriate setting in any way. The president was never inappropriate with anyone in all the times I was with him. He was a gentleman in all respects. That'll make you wonder if she's ever met Donald Trump. She had me until she said he was a gentleman in all respects. Now I literally don't know who she's referring to. But Maxwell didn't stop there. She added a fairly transparent outreach of goodwill to Donald Trump, which is, and I quote, she says, and I just want to say I find it so impressive that he was able to get himself elected president of the United States. Are you shitting me? That's where this interview went. That's a hard-hitting interview there. She's getting on the record her accolades of how impressive it is that he was able to get himself elected president of the United States. When asked directly whether she ever heard Mr. Epstein or anybody say that President Trump had done anything inappropriate with masseuses or with anybody in their world, Maxwell responded, absolutely never, in any context. And this is the same Ghislaine Maxwell who, according to Michael Cohen's recent confession to investigative journalist Tara Palmieri, recruited Virginia Giuffre from Trump's Mar-a-Lago property. And as Breaking Points was pointing out the other day, Trump acknowledged that Virginia Giuffre was stolen by him and Ghislaine and Jeffrey Epstein when she was, 16 years old? I do not believe he died by suicide. No. And perhaps that's the most explosive revelation from Maxwell's DOJ interview was her statement about Jeffrey Epstein's death. When Deputy Attorney General Blanche asked whether she believed Epstein died by suicide, Maxwell responded unequivocally, I do not believe he died by suicide. No. Blanche pressed a little, for appearances, I would say, and asked if she had any speculation or view of who might have killed him. She says, no, I don't. Then he asks her about potential motives. Maxwell provided what might be some of the most eye-opening insight. You can't ignore this about prison and prison violence. And this is straight from the horse's mouth, Ghislaine. And this might be the one thing she was honest about. And I quote, in prison, where I am, they will kill you, or they will pay to kill you for $25 worth of commissary. And I'm like, damn, that's probably true. So I'm not even saying that it's 100,000% impossible that Epstein killed himself. But I mean, it's down to like 1,000th%. It's just hard for me to ever say anything definitively about something I genuinely didn't witness. But I mean, I'm convinced far beyond the shadow of a doubt. And we're going to do some segments on his cellmate because that guy's a real beauty. Now, the Fixer's confession. In the labyrinth world of Jeffrey Epstein's connections, few stories are as explosive as the recent revelation from Michael Cohen, Trump's former fixer, who's blown open a bit of a scandal, except mainstream media doesn't touch it, and which Maxwell's DOJ testimony buries. Investigative journalist Tara Palmieri approached this story with the stated intention of putting the pieces together of a massive sex trafficking operation for the many survivors who've had to suffer without justice and answers. She doesn't care if Democrats or Republicans look bad. She does a great job of reporting, and only the truth matters in the face of such systemic horrors. She has Cohen on, and Cohen initially plays the attack dog, defending Trump and on all matters Epstein. He claims Trump never went to Epstein's island. To quote him, he says, "I just know he didn't because I just know him." Arguably, this guy demonstrates he's an idiot in fewer words than Ghislaine Maxwell did in that ramble paragraph. I just know he didn't because I just know him. Reasoning as circular as it is unconvincing. And when pressed, Cohen denied obvious facts, even denying Trump doodles. You know, the little doodles they were talking about last month? Despite evidence of Trump doodles being sold at freaking Sotheby's auctions. Now, I don't know anything about Epstein. That's what Cohen kept saying. But the truth has a way of leaking through even the most carefully constructed lies. Despite his initial protestations, within minute 4 of their conversation, he does make an admission and pours out what is essentially a confession that would ordinarily be a big deal to the president it was associated with. He confessed he handled a complaint related to Trump and Epstein. He dealt with a case. He dealt with a victim, an accuser, a Jane Doe, accused President Trump of rape. In Cohen's telling, Trump told him to handle it, and handle it he did, like the professional fixer he's always been. Cohen's solution was as predictable as it was horrifying. Get this girl all private investigatored up, track her down, chase her around, dig in, find a soft spot, poke it, and try and discredit her. The issue being that they discovered she had provided a fake address when she reported this. Lo and behold, the private investigator responds back. He's reporting, it's an empty parking lot. Well, this all must be fake if the girl said her address is an empty parking lot, right? This refers to the Katie Johnson case. That's 3 lawsuits, actually, that she filed against Trump during the 2016 election. She was a Jane Doe. She alleged she was raped at Jeffrey Epstein's townhouse by President Trump in 1994 when she was a 13-year-old aspiring model. The case disappeared days before the 2016 election. So Tara Palmieri again, Palmeri, check her out on YouTube. Wonderful reporting. She presented something that hadn't occurred to me, and that's that Jane Does use fake addresses or law firm addresses because they don't want to be tracked down by private investigators. They don't want to be intimidated. So her manner of trying to hide from private investigators is literally what the private investigator turns around and says makes her sketchy. I get it. Palmieri cites Epstein survivor Courtney Wild, who stated Epstein's private investigators were so aggressive against her, they nearly ran her off the road. I mean, that's kind of a big story, right? Donald Trump hired a private investigator to track one of the victims from Epstein. Allegedly? No, I'm sorry, not allegedly. His lawyer said this, not me. Yeah, it's a big story. The sitting president of the United States, through his fixer, hired private investigators to hunt down and intimidate a child rape victim. I guess that's the alleged part. This is criminal behavior. No, I'm sorry. This is the behavior of a criminal organization. And the fact that Cohen was handling this case reveals again, he's Trump's go-to fixer for exactly these kinds of allegations of affairs and indiscretions, just as he handled the Stormy Daniels hush money payments. And now, when confronted with his own complicity by Tara Palmieri, Cohen became extremely aggressive, defensive with her, telling her she's wrong, and he starts debating the truth. It kind of makes sense because it involves him, right? He's the guy in that case. So if she's turning around saying, well, that's all scumbaggery, that I can see why he's getting upset. But still, mainstream media won't touch it. Tara Palmieri's constantly on MSNBC, CNN. They won't talk to her about this. They don't even want her on TV talking about this. They won't let her come on and talk about this. They're not even covering it. So now, my boy, back by popular demand, everybody loves this nincompoop. So from Maxwell's deception and the Trump-Cohen bombshell, let's talk about Prince Andrew. Why I introduced him in a Scottish voice is preposterous. Forgive me the accent. Let's talk about the British royal family, where another tale of systematic exploitation unfolded, and one that also reveals how financial desperation can transform even princes into procurers for predators. Prince Andrew, Duke of York, was once the golden boy of the monarchy. Clearly the more handsome of the two sons, he was the royal heartthrob, the dashing young prince. King Charles himself once called him the Robert Redford looks of the family. He was a helicopter pilot in the Falklands War. He was being pushed forward as the future of the monarchy. I mean, you're allowed to do things, even if you're not going to be the one who's king. But behind the royal facade lurked character flaws, and they proved catastrophic. And royal biographer Andrew Lowney, who's great, you can find interviews with him all over the place. Lowney paints a disturbing portrait from childhood. Andrew was, quote, entitled and pompous and arrogant, unquote. And as an adult, palace staff witnessed, quote, terrible rages, bullying rages, unquote, screaming at servants and calling palace members, quote, effing imbeciles, unquote. Protected by sycophants and isolated from consequences, he became a man who doesn't seem to see them as other human beings. According to Lowney again. A prince who believes in the divine right of kings, actually. Genuinely believes he's of a magic bloodline. One protection officer recalled the prince threatening him with going back to the beat in Brixton. They said he saw service staff as disposable subjects, not even human beings, really. None of them can make anything like enough money to support their lifestyle. That's from Lowney. And it might be the crux of our tale on Andrew. Despite his royal blood, Andrew and Sarah Ferguson struggled financially. Sarah made a lot of money, but they spent at a quicker rate than either could earn. Folie de grandeur. The biographer's words ring with prophetic clarity. Lowney says this is a story about sex and money, but it's the money which is the more important thing. And he thinks that's the real scandal. The way both she and her husband have leveraged their royal position for personal financial gain. Unable to make money outside of the Navy, Andrew became a special trading representative in 2001, a role that would seal his fate and open the door to Jeffrey Epstein, through Ghislaine Maxwell, his occasional lover who felt that he could be useful to Epstein. Andrew met the monster who would destroy his reputation forever. Though they officially met in 1999, the relationship had deeper roots. Andrew had actually known Epstein for a decade by then. What followed was, in Lowney's assessment, a win-win situation for both of them. Epstein paid a lot of bills, introduced Andrew to useful people, and provided him with a ready supply of women. In return, Andrew offered Epstein something far more valuable: respectability. Contacts, top shelf contacts. And as a trade envoy, the ability to take Epstein on some of these trips and introduce him to businesses. Jeffrey Epstein called Andrew his Super Bowl trophy. And that's from a guy who was keeping a picture of Bill Clinton on the wall in an evening gown. I would have thought that his Super Bowl trophy. But Andrew, that designation reveals a lot you need to know about Epstein's operation. Andrew wasn't just another client. He's proof of concept, a sitting member of the British royal family, second son of the Queen, yet can be purchased, controlled, and used as an asset. If a prince could fall to Epstein's web, who couldn't? The cover-up began immediately and continues to this day. As Lowney notes with barely contained disgust, quote, "It's so appalling, really, that the government refused to reveal the files for Andrew's time as special representative, which would say who were on these trips," unquote. The British government actively obstructs transparency, hiding the records that would reveal the true scope of Andrew's introduction of Epstein to international business and political leaders. The Global Intelligence Blackmail Network. Again, as mentioned in Episode 1, as mentioned in Episode 3, as mentioned in Episode 4, the Epstein operation was never just about one man's perversions. It was a sophisticated intelligence operation that created a global blackmail network reaching into the highest levels of power across multiple nations. The evidence of this network's reach and its ongoing protection by intelligence agencies reveals what some characterize as a conspiracy that makes the fictional machinations of spy novels seem quaint by comparison. And this brings us back to Maxwell's lies about the cameras. She told the DOJ there were no surveillance cameras in Epstein's house, despite overwhelming photographic evidence to the contrary. But why would she lie about something so easily disproven? Because acknowledging the cameras means acknowledging the blackmail operation. That's one thing, even if it's as plain as the nose on your face. You can't say it. It would implicate everyone who appears in Epstein's Black Book again. We know Epstein filmed people in his houses, and we know this material was collected by the FBI back in 2006. Now, here's where the story takes a turn. A Palm Beach policeman named Mark Dugan, worried this evidence would be destroyed, never be made public, took some of it and went to Russia. According to MI6 and a Sunday Times investigation, quote, "This material was passed to one of Putin's right-hand men. So Putin, according to the story, has the material," unquote. Let that sink in. Vladimir Putin possesses compromising material on American and British elites that our own FBI has refused to make public. Russia wasn't the only recipient of Epstein's blackmail treasure trove. We've covered this in multiple episodes. Don't forget, the Saudis got to wet their beak. Israel clearly runs the man. CIA gets some love here and there. Even Colonel Gaddafi's Libyan intelligence services. So think about the implications. Epstein's not just running a sex trafficking operation. He's running an intelligence honey trap that collected blackmail material on world leaders, business titans, and political figures. This material was then allegedly distributed to intelligence agencies across the globe, creating a web of mutual blackmail that could explain decades of seemingly inexplicable foreign policy decisions. I've felt that's just fully illustrated from Epstein's death until now. You've never seen more indefensible legislation. Now, why is no one using all this blackmail material if everybody's got it? Well, that's why nobody's using it. It's like nukes. And that question goes across any thinking person's mind who examines this case. If Putin has video, if Mossad has video, meanwhile, the royal family's media manipulation has always operated with ruthless efficiency. Back to Lowney. Quote, the royals can be pretty litigious. They can put on a lot of pressure. So they have ways of keeping these stories under the radar, and there are not many brave media outlets who will fight. The system of suppression extends beyond legal. Threats. Media executives who don't, quote, play the same ball game regarding royal access find themselves frozen out of the palace and its information loop. It's a sophisticated form of information control that would make any authoritarian regime envious, frankly. But universal. I mean, our presidents will threaten you right to your face. I'm not going to talk to you. You say dumb stuff. You're fake news. The pattern of exploitation. The pattern connects the vanishing American children, the royal corruption, the Trump allegations, Maxwell's lies to the DOJ, and the global intelligence blackmail network into a systematic infrastructure of child exploitation that operates with government protection at the highest levels. Representative Mace, a survivor who found herself accidentally uncovering possible child sexual abuse material, put out the question, how do you traffic 1,000 kids and only have one accomplice? Like, that just doesn't make sense to me, unquote. Paul Mary confirms that, quote, the victims have lists of the men that they were sexually abused by, stating it's ludicrous to say that it was just Epstein and Maxwell with over 1,000 girls. Yet Maxwell told the DOJ she never saw a single masseuse ever look unhappy or not come back. Her reasoning was, quote, I don't think if you're being raped, I just can't imagine why you would return, unquote. I don't know enough about battered women to comment on that. Abused women, trafficked women. Now this harkens back just a couple months. Who can remember that messy breakup between lovers Elon Musk and Donald Trump? Oh, the angry tweets and texts. So catty. Elon dropping a breakup tweet like a nuclear bomb, quote, time to drop the really big bomb. Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. That is the real reason they have not been made public. Have a nice day, unquote. Yeah, man. Whoop-de-doo. Everybody's on his phone book list. Everybody's in his black book. All of Hollywood, all of Wall Street, world leaders, diplomats, titans, sultans, butchers, bakers, candlestick makers. No shit, Elon. Jeffrey Epstein was a money launderer. He helped people evade taxes, and he'd been hanging out in New York since the 70s. You think he didn't know Donald Trump? And if Elon Musk has evidence that Donald Trump is or has ever been involved in child sex trafficking, I'd say he should be compelled to share his evidence. Nobody called Musk to testify. I'd have been all over it. I'd have been like, okay, big mouth, subpoena. Maybe there's something, maybe he knows something I don't. Palmieri's investigative attempts led to what she describes as a systematic shutdown of FBI investigations. She had been in contact with senior FBI sources who confirmed they were very much still investigating the case. However, according to Palmieri, the case closed just like a week or two later after she made the phone call. It was crazy. Case closed, no third parties. Her source's understanding is that it was Trump who shut down all the cases. The transparency fight and the redacted files. The battle for transparency in the Epstein case reveals a government actively working to protect predators rather than prosecute them. Redacted documents, sealed files, mysterious deaths of key witnesses. There's Epstein files on the FBI website. They're all blacked out. You can't read it, but they put it up for you. The FBI's video recordings, flight logs, financial records, witness testimony, and victim statements. We are not allowed to see justice because it would implicate too many powerful individuals. I mean, just redact the kids' names. This isn't freaking rocket science. The victims want it released. The ongoing cover-up extends beyond America's borders. Maxwell's treatment raises questions about what deals were made to secure her silence. Trump's lawyer, Todd Blanche, had his conversations with Maxwell, after which she was moved to her Club Med, her new setup in Texas. We know Maxwell has the goods. We know Maxwell has the goods. And her comfortable prison setup, her media silence, her ability to spout bullshit in the face of the DOJ and have Todd Blanche take it like a good boy is a flex. I think she's the boss. Maxwell's DOJ interviews implicate no one, deny everything, and lies about provable facts. She wants a pardon. You scratch my back, I'll keep my mouth shut. Your secrets are safe with me. The reckoning that must come. This Epstein scandal and some of the coinciding upheaval in the world that's adjacent to it vis-a-vis his handlers in Israel and the power structures therein. From 448,000 children disappeared into trafficking networks, royal princes trading dignity for dollars, fixers intimidating child rape victims, intelligence agencies hoarding blackmail material, Nevada prosecutors sending pedophiles back to Israel, convicted sex offenders lying to federal prosecutors to protect the powerful. Epstein was a facilitator, but he wasn't the architect. As we keep saying, this was a system. Anybody could die and they were replaceable. Anybody could get arrested and they were replaceable. It's a system that creates vulnerable victims, delivers them to predators, and then protects those predators through official channels. Back to Mace's question, quote, how do you traffic 1,000 kids and only have one accomplice? I'll tell you how. Go back to Inspector General Kafari's admission of no safeguards to protect 448,000 children described as a system to perpetuate. That's not a failure. That's a success. When Prince Andrew refuses to leave his lodge while children are missing, We see the priorities of our ruling class laid bare when Michael Cohen admits to hiring private investigators to hunt down child rape victims. We see how power protects itself. When Elon Musk tweets that Trump is in the Epstein files and nothing happens, we see the depth of institutional capture. And when Ghislaine Maxwell lies to federal prosecutors about cameras that are documented in FBI photographs, we see how the cover-up operates at the highest levels of government. It operates by treating you and me like we're idiots, or like we just don't have enough time to do our homework. Just remember, this is all preposterous. This is never about justice or the truth. It's about creating plausible deniability, a paper trail of denials, and everybody walks away clean with you and I just as uncomfortable as we were yesterday. Justice delayed is justice denied. And in the shadows of this cover-up, justice screams for daylight, as does more of the populace daily. Because we know the files exist. We know the evidence is there. We know the cameras were real despite Ghislaine Maxwell's lies. The victims are waiting for justice. The question is whether we have the moral courage to demand it, regardless of who gets exposed in the process. And the reckoning is coming. Like I said, I think we'll see a nuclear bomb get set off by Israel before this ever all becomes a reckoning. There'll be a fake alien invasion before anybody gets dragged to judgment on this. Sources and references include the testimony of DHS Inspector General Joseph Kafari before Federal Law Enforcement Subcommittee in 2025 regarding catch and release, lose and forget, addressing the crisis of unaccompanied alien children. House Homeland Security Committee hearing testimony regarding unaccompanied alien children, monitoring, and case management. Royal biographer Andrew Lowney interviews and statements regarding Prince Andrew and financial relationships with Jeffrey Epstein. He's a good guy. You should check his interviews out. Investigative journalist Tara Palmieri, who's crushing it. Her interview with Michael Cohen regarding Katie Johnson. MI6 and Sunday Times investigative reports regarding international distribution of Epstein blackmail materials and royal family media manipulation analysis. Elon Musk Twitter statements regarding Trump Epstein. And Tara Palmieri reports on FBI investigation shutdowns. Oh, Breaking Points. Breaking Points is great. And of course, the Ghislaine Maxwell DOJ interview transcripts of Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. Interviews with Maxwell, including her statements about Trump, Epstein's death, surveillance cameras, and her role in the operation. You can literally find them just by Googling DOJ Ghislaine Maxwell interviews. Again, the Kim Iverson Show interview with Jaco Boyens, and that's JACO BOOYENS. This guy's on the ball. JP Morgan lawsuit filings. That's JP Morgan Epstein lawsuit filings. U.S. Virgin Islands v. JP Morgan Chase. That's a civil suit filing. Whitney Webb, One Nation Under Blackmail, Volumes 1 and 2. Brooklyn DA, Texas AG data as cited in the Boyens interview. And did I go looking anywhere else? No. Got another one coming right behind this. If you haven't subscribed, hit that button and then please hit the bell icon so you actually get alerts. If you're interested in podcasting, legal or otherwise, don't hesitate to reach out to Clerk at Legal Podcasting. Again, legal or not, we can put you through to the right folks if you are nonprofit or any other industry. We like that stuff too.